parts of that. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez, are you familiar with the Attorney General's national mortgage settlement that was entered into? And California was instrumental in that. So I bring that up because during this period of time, in 2010, the Attorney Generals across this country entered into a national mortgage settlement with some of the big banks. And the reason why we did so is because many of these banks were engaging in egregious practices. And those egregious practices are what we heard today. It was at a time when homeowners were being, instead of working with homeowners to keep them in their homes or help them, they would put them on a dual track. And it's what I heard today, is they would tell you they're going to work with you if they even told you that. And then there would be another track that would be sending you down that foreclosure path. So on one hand, you think you'd be working with them, and the next, you're getting a foreclosure notice. The other thing that was happening, which again I heard today, was the constantly asking homeowners to resubmit the paperwork. You'd submit it, and then they'd call you and say, oh, you didn't have this information. You need to start all over again. So much so you submitted it over and over and over again. The reason why they did that is because the people that were handling the paperwork were living in a different town or a different division than the people that were working to save and modify your homes quite often. So nobody was communicating with one another, and the banks didn't care. The banks did not care, even after the attorneys general, as we brought it to their attentions, that this is happening, you need to address this issue, and we need to work together to help homeowners. Because of that national mortgage settlement, we put in place for the first time a requirement that these banks have to engage in certain practices. We stopped that egregious practice. And the reason why I bring that up is because that national mortgage settlement was one of a kind, because it was not only all the attorneys generals across the country, but it was with the federal government, and it was highlighting the egregious practices of the banks. And what I am hearing, which makes me even more concerned about Mr. Mnuchin, is during this time period when the discussion was the egregious practices of the banks and what they were engaging in not to help homeowners, and he knew it, he was still engaging in that practice. And that is concerning to me, because for my purposes, as somebody who has fought every day for homeowners in my state, I want everybody who is willing to help to be there at the table helping homeowners when there is a crisis. And to this day, many of you are still suffering, and many of you are entitled to some sort of relief that he should be and his bank should be working with you to figure out what that relief is. Now, let me just make this caveat. Not everybody's going to stay in their home because they just can't afford it, because there were times, listen, the practices that these banks engaged in, whether through teaser rates or these Alt-A mortgages, it just made it impossible sometimes for folks to stay in their homes when they were losing their jobs. But we put in place a practice where the banks should help you. If you couldn't stay in your home, if they couldn't modify the loans, if they couldn't work with you, then they work with you on finding other housing or work with you on moving to the next step. And what I'm hearing right now is Mr. Mnuchin and his bank didn't care, didn't do any of that. And even though this was the topic at the time when everybody was losing their homes, they still engaged in egregious practices. And that, to me, is the reason why this gentleman should not be in charge of the Secretary of the Treasury. Because I know as the Attorney General that I engaged so many federal agencies to help homeowners in our state, because that, to me, was the key for fixing and addressing this mortgage crisis. And let me say this. There is a ripple effect still happening, as we heard today, from the mortgage crisis that we had that started back in 2007, 2008. It's not over. And for me, it is about finding people that are going to be willing to help us address these issues. So what I want to ask all of you, if you are willing, whether you contact me or we work with folks within your states and your attorneys general, are any of you aware of the national mortgage settlement? Okay. And so there are programs for relief. There are programs that are out there that we should explore together. I understand, Ms. Eisen-Hodruff, that you still are, this is still an issue for you. I think it's something we need to talk to you about and figure out how in your state, in your community, we can look for programs that are going to benefit you. Okay, but I just wanted to make that comment because I don't have any questions, and then I completely understand what is happening to you, because it is something we have been fighting for the last 6-7 years, and it's still going on, and it is still egregious conduct, and it needs to stop. And so I thank you all for being here so much today and telling your story.